Hello, welcome to Beyond Good and Evil Aphorism 3. Get very jealous when I hear Tucker Carlson praising Nick Fuentes. And he's like, the young man's so talented speaking to a camera. I'm like, I'm better than him. Oh, it'll be fun. You got to believe in yourself in life. And I believe in myself. Part 1, still in part 1, on the prejudices of philosophers. After having looked long enough between the philosopher's lines and fingers, I say to myself, by far the greater part of conscious thinking must still be included among instinctive activities, and that even goes for philosophical thinking. We have to relearn here as one has had to relearn about heredity and what is innate, as the act of birth deserves no consideration in the whole process and procedure of heredity. So, being conscious is not in any decisive sense the opposite of what is instinctive. Most of the conscious thinking of a philosopher is secretly guided and forced into certain channels by his instincts. Behind all logic and its seeming sovereignty of movement, two, there stand valuations, or more clearly, physiological demands for the preservation of a certain type of life. For example, that the definite should be worth more than the indefinite, and mere appearance worth less than truth. Such estimates might be, in spite of their regulative importance for us, nevertheless mere foreground estimates, a certain kind of Neacetary. Neacetary? Let me see. Folly, stupidity, silliness, one of Nietzsche's favorite French words. A certain kind of necessary, which may be necessary for the preservation of such beings as we are. Supposing, that is, that not just man is the measure of things. This is interesting because I believe that man is the measure of things. Man is the measure of all things. Protagoras, born about 480 BC. I would say man is the measure of things as well, as man is made in the image of God. But this is interesting. I think this is really where I find Nietzsche to be most interesting, because he challenges, while not undermining, a lot of beliefs that don't necessarily support their conclusions. We believe that we are made in the image of God, but a lot of the conclusions we draw from that aren't necessarily predicated entirely on that belief. So, after having looked long enough between the philosopher's lines and fingers, I say to myself, the greater part of conscious thinking must be included among the instinctive activities. This is very clearly true. Conscious thinking is not something we deliberately engage in. It is something that we experience. We experience our mind having thoughts. We don't go down and be like, I'm going to think these thoughts, and then only these thoughts occur to you. It's just this thing that happens instinctively, automatically of itself. And so what is the conclusion to be drawn here? You have to relearn here as one is to learn about. So he's saying that the time we set aside for conscious thinking, like giving birth, does not necessarily affect the outcome of what we think. The same way that giving birth does not affect the heredity of the child. The child is already existing, and then you give birth to the child. These thoughts are already existing. The foreground from which these thoughts arise is already existing. So being conscious is not in any decisive sense the opposite of what is instinctive. Most of conscious thinking of a philosopher is secretly guided and forced into certain channels by his instincts. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think that most thinking is instinctual, and I myself do my best thinking when I follow the shiny light in my own mind. There's a certain glitter that thoughts have to me when they make sense, and when they don't make sense, they don't shine in a certain way. It seems more forced or contrived, and I pay less attention to those thoughts to my benefit. This is interesting. So behind all logic and its seeming sovereignty of the moment, too, there stand valuations, or more clearly physiological demands for the preservation of a certain type of life. So what he's saying is when we think we're thinking objectively about things, we're actually creating and reasoning in a way that creates the type of reasoning that allows beings such as ourselves to continue existing. They're physiological demands that are placed upon our bodies, that are expressed as thoughts through our mind, through this activity we call conscious thinking, but which is really the emergence of these thoughts out of this instinctive, physiologically rooted continuation that extends back through our heredity. For example, that the definite should be worth more than the indefinite, and mere appearance worth less than truth. Such estimates might be, in spite of their regulative importance for us, nevertheless more foreground estimates. A certain kind of silliness which may be necessary for the preservation of beings such as we are, supposing, that is, that not just man is the measure of things. So I kind of see what he's getting at. He gets at this more later on in Beyond Good and Evil, how appearance has its own sort of value that is like very necessary. Like we make decisions based on appearance. So for us to say appearance doesn't matter is deceitful. It's not truthful. It's a fiction to pretend that appearance matters less than truth. Most of the time, appearance matters more than truth, at least given the way we act, and that the definite is worth more than the indefinite. Again, yeah, we often act as though things which are not clearly defined are more important than those things which are clearly defined. So the fact that a lot of philosophers pretend as though the true definite things of this world are much more valuable than the indefinite appearances of this world is it's a fiction. It's just not the way people act. Maybe they act that way sometimes. Maybe we need to believe that people act that way. But in reality, people don't act that way. So this is simply an observation of what is. And he's saying, supposing that not just man is the measure of things. I would say man is still the measure of things, because what else are you going to measure things with? Water? Relative to what? So I think man is still the measure of things. But, yeah, I mean, everything else he says makes complete sense. So tune in tomorrow, and we'll break down aphorism number 4.